All right, good day, everybody. Wherever you are, I'm so happy and I'm so excited to be bringing this to you. It's a very, very big package from CMRC, Creative Minds Royal Concept. And I'm most privileged to be the innovator, the initiator of this program. It is a very, very big success to bring this to you. Free Success Project 2025. And this year, I am so happy. We have amazing facilitators, persons who are selfless, who are passionate, who are explicit in every ramification of their discipline, and they will blow your mind. So I want you to keep your tabs and start watching these videos and get excellent results and come back to tell us, and we'll rejoice with you. God bless you.
All right, welcome back everyone. I remain Adedoyin Oguntade. So in this session, I'm going to be explaining a few things under the recommended texts that we have for UTME, because all of these things are very, very necessary. All of these texts carry the prevalent part of the questions you're going to be encountering in UTME. So I'll just get to it quickly. Under drama, we have two texts that are prescribed, one African drama and one non-African drama. The African drama we have is Lion and Jewel by Wole Soyinka. So in Lion and Jewel by Wole Soyinka, you just get to see or understand the idea of clash of cultures, modernity and the traditional culture, how all of these things are personified by characters like Baruka, Lakunle, and we also have Sidi in the text. So you just get to see how these two individuals fight over the idea of love and who is to get married to the other individual. This is basically what the play talks about. And in the text or in the play, you get to understand that Baruka is the lion while Sidi is seen as the jewel. And for a character like Lakunle, you see an individual that represents a caricature of a modern educated man, in the sense that he holds some of the modern ideals, but it's from a traditional culture. And he represents a caricature basically because you see how Lakunle is not interested in paying Sidi's bride price because he feels like it is archaic, barbaric, and even describes it with a lot of vocabularies. So basically, look back, Lion and Jewel by Wole Soyinka just talks about the idea of modernity versus tradition. Moving on, the non-African drama is Look Back in Anger by John Osborne. So what you see in Look Back in Anger is that it's a postmodern play that talks about the economic issues in England and how all of these issues are being encoded or are being personified by a character like Jimmy Potter. Jimmy Potter is a 25-year-old middle-class individual, but he hates his society basically because of the issues that are facing the society. The British society at the time was a society that the colonized country had gotten away from, had gotten freedom from, and as such, it was going through a lot of economic issues. Also, if you're looking at Look Back in Anger, you'd have to consider the idea of the kitchen sink drama. Kitchen sink drama is a kind of drama that explores the domestic life of individuals. Also, this play functions as a realist play in the sense that it talks about the domestic life and then the harsh reality of things. Also, a character like Jimmy Potter in Look Back in Anger personifies or represents the concept of the angry young man. And in addition, Look Back in Anger is seen as a sort of autobiography because it's like a story of John Osborne himself being told, or John Osborne's personality being personified by Jimmy Potter. So moving on, under the prose, the African prose we have two African prose and one non-African prose. The African prose is Second Class Citizen by Buchi Emecheta. Second Class Citizen by Buchi Emecheta is also a form of autobiography in the sense that it talks about Buchi Emecheta's life, basically. But it's something that functions as a form of faction in the sense that the names, the locations, and some other things are changed. So Second Class Citizen is a Bildung drama because it talks about growth and development. There's a very major character in the novel, which is Ada. Ada Ofili is a character who grew or was born into a family where a boy child was expected, and at first she was denied education. She was not allowed to go to school and all of that. But eventually she fought her way through all of these things. The odds that were set against her, she passed all of these barriers. After getting her primary and secondary education, despite the fact that her parents had died and all of those other stuff, Ada had it in mind to go to the United Kingdom because she got that dream after Lawyer Nweze got back from the United Kingdom, and that was what she wanted. Although Ada had a lot of issues with her husband, Francis, who she married because he was nice at the time and he was quite ambitious. But eventually, Francis proved himself to be an irresponsible father and husband, because while in the UK, he was failing his courses and was blaming everything on Ada. And in addition, you get to see that second class citizen is the title itself is quite symbolic on two pedestals. The first one is in relation to gender, where you see that females are seen as being second to male, an idea of second class citizenship being reflected through gender. Also, you would see the idea of second class citizen when Ada, Francis, and their children went to the United Kingdom. Then in the United Kingdom, the whites treat them as low individuals. They don't treat them as being on the same level with them. That's why a chapter like chapter 6 of the novel says, sorry, no colors. That was the point in time where Ada and Francis were trying to get another apartment to live in. And by the time they got a particular offer, they got there, and then the woman, the landlady there said the room was no longer available. So you just get to see how Buche Mecheta explores or depicts all of these ideas through this work, because majorly Buche Mecheta's work is always cut across the idea of feminism. But this particular work adds another layer to it, which is the layer of racism. So moving on from there, we have Unexpected Joy Done by Alex Agei-Aguirre. So Unexpected Joy Done by Alex Agei-Aguirre talks about how the idea of xenophobia, or the existence of xenophobia, separated two siblings for a space of 15 years. So we see characters like Nithaki Moses and Mama Orojo. Nithaki Moses is the protagonist, while Mama Orojo is the deuteragonist. A deuteragonist majorly is a second major character in a literary work. So you see how Mama Orojo and her parents left Ghana due to the alien extinction policy about 15 years ago, back in the 1960s. They left Ghana, but Nithaki Moses stayed back in Ghana with his grandmother. And 15 years later, you see that Nithaki Moses is striving to survive in Ghana. His wife was even sick, and she eventually died. Afterwards, he felt he had no reason to be in Ghana anymore, so he left for Nigeria. And at that point in time, his sister had become so independent, and she had made it in Nigeria. And as such, what you basically see in the text is that you see the usage of parallel plots, such that if a chapter explains something from Ghana, which Moses resides in, the next chapter is going to talk about Mama Orojo in Nigeria and all of that. Eventually, these two siblings reunite, and that's where the text, the novel, gets its significance. Unexpected Joy Done, because at that point in time, it was Moses and Aaron. If you read the text or you read the analysis, you will encounter these characters. Aaron, Moses, they slept at the uncompleted part of a building at Ejashe, and in Ijashe at that period, stealing was something very, very common. So the people at the house felt they were thieves. And the moment they started chasing them, it happened to be Mama Orojo's house. And all of a sudden, she saw her younger brother. And then she shouted Moses, because all of this happened around 5 a.m. So you just get to see the significance of the title of the novel itself. So moving on, Woodry Night by Emily Bronte. Now, Woodry Night by Emily Bronte is a book that most students shy away from, because there's always this complaint that the text is quite complex and it's not so easy to comprehend and all of that. But one thing that you need to understand about Woodry Night is that, firstly, it's a Victorian text. It talks about things, or the reality of things during the Victorian era. Also, Woodry Night by Emily Bronte is a Gothic work. A Gothic work, or a Gothic novel, is a kind of novel that has the presence of the supernatural, talks about ghosts, talks about spirits and other stuffs. And the first Gothic novel that was written was Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. So that's like an added bonus. So back to Woodry Night. Woodry Night explores the idea of characters like Heathcliff, Mr. Henshaw. Mr. Henshaw, after visiting Liverpool for 3 days, brings Heathcliff into his house. But you get to see that Woodry Night basically explores two main themes, and those are the themes of love and revenge. Those are the two main themes in Woodry Night, because you see the idea of love between Heathcliff and Catherine, and you also see the idea of revenge also from Heathcliff, when Catherine eventually decided to marry Edgar Linton while jettisoning him. Also, another thing you get to see that's very much necessary in Woodry Night is that Woodry Night is explained through the usage of frame narrative. I feel like most students don't understand that all of the things that are explained in Woodry Night, it's as if there is a story within a story, because a frame narrative has to do with the concept of a story within a story. So you get to see the first narrator, or the primary narrator, as we call it, Nelly Dean. She's the primary narrator, while Lockwood exists as the secondary narrator. Although it is Lockwood that begins the explanation, Nelly Dean takes it up and explains deeply. Also, the novel makes use of a cyclic plot. A cyclic plot is a kind of plot that moves back, where the story or the story start from a part that is almost at the end of it, and then it goes back through the usage of flashback to explain some set of things, and then comes back to the present again. So moving on from that, we have the poetry. Under African poetry, we have Black Woman by Seda Senghor. Black Woman by Seda Senghor is an ode, a poem that was written in the 1930s to praise the beauty of the black woman. And it was the first of its kind, because most of the poems that have been written before that period were written to celebrate the beauty of the white woman. But this poem is an ode celebrating the beauty of the black woman. Also, it serves as an allegory in the sense that it highlights the good qualities of Africa itself, because at an allegorical level, it's talking about the beauty of Africa. So moving on from that, Leader and the Led by New York Shindari. In Leader and the Led by New York Shindari, what you basically see is the idea of leadership and followership, and how and the postulates in which Africa leadership and followership exist in. And you get to see that the poet's persona uses a jungle to explain all of these things. That's why the poem is allegorical. Any work that's allegorical means it adds meanings beyond what it's primarily expressed in. So in that text, in the poem, you see that New York Shindari talks about how the leadership and followership in Africa exists in a very, very bad state, and how what should be accepted or what should be brought into vogue is the idea of balance, where a leader that is needed is a leader that is both upright and still compassionate. Balance, as proclaimed by the Forest Sage. Moving on, The Grivelands of Africa by Augustine Neto. All right, The Grivelands of Africa by Augustine Neto is a poem written by Augustine Neto, is an Angolan, and this poem was first written in Portuguese. For Black Woman, it was first written in French. It was named Femme Noire, and the poem is a free verse because it was eventually translated into English. So for Griveland of Africa, you get to see the idea of how the poet's persona complains about what the Europeans have put Africans through, both during the time of slavery and during the present period, because the poet persona talks about the ideas of both old and the new form of slavery. And the poem has 7 stanzas. The first 3 stanzas lament and talk about the harsh things that the Europeans have put Africans through. It also talks about the idea of neocolonialism. But the final 4 stanzas talk about the idea of hope, where the poet's persona says things like, although Africa has been put through a lot of things, the land of Africa still lives on, basically. So if you read the poem, you get more understanding of these things. Song of Women of My Land. Now, this Song of Women of My Land talks about how the Song of Women of this poet's persona's land have been placed under servitude. And that's why being placed under servitude, they decided to sing. But what happens there is that they decide to sing to cheat time, but eventually time takes away the lyrics of these their songs. So what we basically explore in this poem is the tyranny of time. Also, this poem is seen as a dirge about a dirge, because a dirge basically is a poem of sorrow, loss of a particular thing and all. Moving on, Radar of the Treasure Trove by Ladi Wasonu. Radar of the Treasure Trove by Ladi Wasonu is a kind of poem that talks about the idea of rage and the idea of exploring peace and then joy as humans, because the poem is quite philosophical and reflective. Please pay attention to this things. Philosophical and reflective, in the sense that the poem begins with, what can be worthy of your life? What is dearer than the gems of your dreams? Now, all of these questions are being posed to we the readers, because the poem exists as a dramatic monologue. A dramatic monologue refers to a kind of poem where you have somebody speaking, you have listeners, but the person that is being addressed cannot provide a response. Also, this poem is based on setting, universal and eternal, because the subject that are being explored, or the subject that is being explored in this poem, is one that is widely spoken about. It's not just something that is restricted to Africa or restricted to Europe. Moving on, A Government Driver on His Retirement by Chibuike Ono. This poem is a narrative poem because it talks about the life of a government driver who has served for 35 years in service, and he has done so nice things while in service. But on the day is to retire, he even gets a very good reward for his meritorious service, gets a brand new car. But this individual is someone that's been used to drinking, and eventually he dies within a single day of freedom because he's unable to control himself. Also, beyond all of these things, we have non-African poems. We have Bat by D.H. Lawrence. We have The Good Morrow by John Donne. We have Cagebed by Maya Angelou. And we also have Journey of the Magi by T.S. Eliot. Now, all of these texts are the texts that have been recommended by JAMB for this exam. Do not bother reading texts like Invisible Man because it's not part of it. Let Me Die Alone, it's not part of it. Don't bother reading poems like Beasley Poplars and Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Delan Thomas. So if you get to understand all of these things basically, you'd be able to flow and then do well in UTME. Also, as I said in the previous video, if you can lay your hands on exam focus in literature, it is really, really going to help you. That's like, once you have exam focus and you can judiciously read it, you're going to do so well in literature. The idea of literature, as most students have it at the back of their mind, is that it's hard. But I can tell you, UTME literature is not hard. One of my UTME exams I wrote, I had 81 in literature. My first UTME, I had 280. Second UTME, I had 298. So the idea of literature or art courses being hard, art students not being able to score good marks, just exists as a sham to me. Because if you can place your mind on it, basically, you're going to do so well at it. And have at the back of your mind that Jeremiah 29:11 says, God knows the plan he has for us, plans of good and not of evil, to give us an expected end. So what is just expected of you as a student is just put in the right amount of work and always consider the God factor. And by the grace of God, you're going to do so well. I remain my humble self, Adedoyin Oguntade. Thank you so much.
Be sure to link up with us, message us, seek out for our email, send us messages for further questions and mentorship after you have seen these videos. I'm very happy to say this again, that it's a time for you to move on and succeed. It's a free success project 2025. Bless you everywhere that you are. Again, my name is Emmanuel Aderoju Adeyemo from Creative Minds Royal Concept.